I was house sitting for a friend who had gone away on a weekend getaway with her boyfriend. She had just moved into the neighborhood and didn't feel quite comfortable leaving her new place unattended. That's where I came in. I didn't mind spending my weekend there. The way I saw it, it was just as much of a getaway for me as her trip was for her. See, I still lived at home with my parents and younger sister, and sometimes our home got a little too crowded for all the outspoken personalities. I looked forward to having some time to myself, even if it was just for a couple of days. When I got to her house Friday night, I knew she would have already been gone, so I let myself in with the spare key she'd given me earlier that day. I wasn't a complete stranger to her new place. I helped her move in and visited a handful of times since. I knew the layout of the house and pretty much where everything was, so it didn't really take long for me to make myself at home. I popped the stuffed crust DiGiorno on the oven and set the timer. I turned on some music and played it loud enough for me to hear in the shower, but not loud enough to disturb the neighbors since it was getting kind of late. As I showered, there was an eerie feeling I got as I rinsed the soap from my eyes. I felt like I wasn't alone. You know that feeling you get when someone enters a room and you sense their presence without seeing or hearing them? Well, that's what I felt as I cleared the water from my eyes. Like there was some presence around me, looming just on the other side of the shower curtain. I pulled back the curtain, but there was nothing there. I had left open the bathroom door and could feel a cool draft coming through it. Maybe that's what I sensed. That, along with the pitch blackness of the hallway, made me feel a little uneasy, so I quickly got out of the shower and closed the door before returning to the hot water. After I was done showering, I toweled off and dried my hair, then slipped into my PJs. I found something to watch on the television as the final minutes of the oven timer ticked away. As I sat on the couch, the same eerie feeling that came over me in the shower suddenly returned, only it felt a lot more prevalent. I whipped my head around expecting to see someone standing directly over me, but there was no one there. I remember thinking that my mind was playing tricks on me. I was all alone in a foreign setting and my imagination was trying to run wild. It may sound crazy and a bit childish, but to put my mind at ease and stifle my jitters, I turned on every light in the living room, grabbed a knife from the kitchen, and turned on every other light in the house. I even checked all the closets and under my friend's bed. I left no room unchecked and no light bulb off. The oven timer went off and I headed back into the kitchen and used the knife I'd been wielding for my protection to cut into my pizza. To keep my mood light, I binged on 2 Broke Girls and Seinfeld. 2 hours and 3 slices later, I was ready to call it a night. I hadn't experienced any more eerie sensations, but I wasn't quite ready to relinquish the knife I'd been keeping in arm's reach. I put my dishes in the sink, but kept the knife in hand as I checked the locks on the front and back doors and turned off the kitchen and living room lights. I went into my friend's bedroom, closed her door and shut off the light before crawling into bed and pulling the covers up to my neck. I was tired, so it didn't take me long to doze off. I had only been asleep for an hour when I was awakened by a sound that I couldn't make out. I couldn't even be sure it came from inside the house. I started to go back to sleep but realized I had to pee, so I grabbed the knife and headed into the bathroom. While I was in there, I heard a faint noise coming from the living room area that sounded a lot like shuffling footsteps. With a tight grip on the knife's handle, I pulled up my pants as I slowly rose from the toilet seat. My heart was racing and my rushing adrenaline was putting my senses on high. I peered into the dark living room from the edge of the hallway, but I didn't see anyone. Part of me wanted to turn on the living room light to be sure, but the switch was on the other side of the room and I wasn't feeling all that brave. I backed back towards my friend's bedroom when I suddenly heard shuffling again. Only this time it wasn't coming from the living room. It was coming from behind me. I turned around and at the very end of the hallway was the partially open door of my friend's second bedroom. I immediately found that troubling because I know I closed it earlier after searching it. I also know I left the light on in there, and now it was off. I cautiously proceeded back up the hallway, but not to investigate the second bedroom, to retrieve my phone off the nightstand in my friend's room. I didn't know if it was simply my paranoia getting the best of me, or if an actual intruder was in the house. I carefully inched back towards my friend's room and located my phone. I dialed in 911, but held off on sending the call through. I felt a sudden impulse to check the other room before I placed the call. The last thing I wanted was for cops to show up and find nothing but a scared young girl who couldn't handle being on her own. I stepped back into the hallway and began making my way towards the second bedroom. I leveled the knife just a few inches out in front of me, ready to plunge it into anything or anyone that came towards me. As I approached the room, a soft whimper escaped through the slightly open door. To my ears, it sounded childlike, or at the very least, feminine. Had my friend come home early? Was there something wrong? Maybe she and her boyfriend had a fight. I was all too ready to accept that premise as a logical explanation. I nudged the door open and saw the dark silhouette of a woman in all black seated on the edge of the bed. I couldn't make out much else due to the darkness of the room, but she appeared to be crying. "Sharon, is that you?" I asked, stepping into the room. "What's wrong?" "What did you do to my house?" she whimpered softly. "What did you do with my things?" "I didn't do anything," I answered, lowering the knife as I stepped closer to her. "What's the matter?" I practically jumped out of my skin in fright when in a heavier, malevolent tone she yelled,
"What did you do to my house? What did you do with my things?"
Instinctively, I took several steps back and raised the knife out in front of me. "Who the hell are you?" "I'm calling the police," I said. A bright light from a passing car shone through the window blinds, briefly lighting up the room. It was in the fleeting second that the woman on the bed turns towards me, pulling back the black veil that covered her head. The second I saw her face, I let off a blood-curdling scream. Her skin was old and wrinkled and as pale as the moon itself, but what frightened me most was her eyes. They were all white.
"Get out of my house,"
it screamed at me. I bolted out of the room as fast as I could, dropping the knife and my cell phone somewhere along the way. I ran as fast as I could through the hallway, tripping over something as I entered the dark living room and fell into a stack of unpacked boxes. I looked down the hallway and saw the old woman in black standing in the bedroom's doorway.
"Get out of my house,"
she screamed in a demonic tone. She began advancing through the hallway, but there was no stride to her step. I couldn't believe it. She was floating. Floating. Not only that, she was floating towards me, and floating fast. Her face was twisted with evil, and her teeth overcome with rot. She outstretched her arms as she closed the distance between us and screamed,
"Get out of my house."
I pushed away the boxes that surrounded me and got back to my feet and ran straight for the front door. I didn't recall unlocking the door, but I was so scared I probably just snatched it open. However I did it, all I remember was jumping outside and jumping down the steps of the porch. I heard the door violently slam shut behind me, but I didn't dare turn around to validate that. I kept running. I left all my clothes, my phone, and my car at my friend's house that night. I didn't stop running until I made it to a Walmart about 3 miles away. I approached the Walmart greeter, winded, sweaty, and barefoot, asking for help. The nice older woman sat me down on a bench and let me use her cell phone. I first called my dad and asked him if he can come and pick me up. Then I called the police and told them about what happened. When they went back to my friend's house to search it, they didn't find anyone, but they did notice the damage to the front door. They said it looked like it had been kicked in. I guess I didn't unlock it after all. My dad installed new locks on the door the next day, but I haven't gone back to that house ever since. My friends never complained about seeing or experiencing anything weird there, but I know what I saw that night, and I know it was real. Nothing in this world could ever make me set foot in that place again.